Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for the invitation. And I hope you are going to benefit from my presentation on mixed method research. I've been a mixed method researcher for almost a decade now, and I want to believe that now I understand it. And if you have any challenges in terms of understanding mixed method research, you are very much welcome to refer to the references that are at the end of this presentation. And you realize that I've written quite a number of pieces on mixed method research from various angles. And the latest one being the chapter in a book that I edited, where I am still trying to get to terms and simplifying mixed method research. And I am enjoying it now more than I did in 2008 when I started it. So this is a presentation that is based on the literature and also based on my own experience. So I will start by way of an introduction and background to mixed method research. I think mixed method research is becoming very popular. It is becoming popular because it has a potential to investigate complex problems and provide a relatively comprehensive picture where one research methodology or method is unable to address the phenomenon. So as you can see from the introduction, it is where a research problem cannot be addressed fully by one methodology that you decide to use mixed method research. I will continue emphasizing this point because many people use mixed method research because they think it's fashionable. You shouldn't use mixed method research because it's fashionable. You should use it when your question demands that you use more than one methodology. You don't have to waste time using mixed methods when you can actually answer your research question successfully using one methodology. So that is a very important point. So mixed method research helps you to understand your problem comprehensively. And secondly, I like the point that Mertens adds. That reference is there at the end of this presentation. Mertens, I think she talks of wicked problems. Of course, wicked problems are not unique to Mertens. There are a number of authors that have since written on wicked problems. But in the context of Mertens, wicked problems include things like climate change, terrorism and conflict, social inequalities, healthcare, education and educational access and poverty, and even probably racism. These are wicked problems. These are things uh, that we may want to avoid, but according to Mertens, wicked problems are replete with social and institutional uncertainties, and they cannot be resolved by traditional research processes. So mixed method therefore becomes important when you are dealing with questions that go beyond the the methodologies that we have traditionally used. That is the classical methodology, methodologies which include quantitative research methodology and the qualitative research methodologies. Those are the traditional research processes that we are referring to here. So mixed method research brings together a diverse a diverse number of perspectives. It brings also together people from diverse backgrounds, people from diverse philosophical foundations. I am going to deal with philosophical foundations briefly later on for you to be up to speed with what I am referring to. So mixed method research actually, I would say in short, it accommodates diversity. Those who are positivists and those who are interpretivists, they are accommodated in mixed method research. There is no need for them to quarrel over their philosophical foundations. There is no need for them to have differences over their philosophical stances because mixed method research is an umbrella that accommodates that diversity, as we are going to see as we progress with our presentation. And In a nutshell, mixed method research contributes to building a better world. You remember the better world that we are trying to build is actually articulated in the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. So the mixed method research actually offers the potential for a complete methodological toolkit for researchers. So if you want a complete toolkit for research, you want actually to go the mixed method research way. But as I said in my introduction, don't go the mixed method research way for the sake of it. Go for the mixed method research way in order to address your problem comprehensively. So mixed method research, as I said, it integrates diversity, expertise from various quarters, and it creates knowledge that is balanced, as opposed to positivist and interpretivist knowledge, which are a bit biased towards a certain philosophical stance. I will probably see what your contributions are in the chat when I get them. So I will step down from the introduction and briefly look at choosing a methodology. So it is very clear from what I have said that there are a number of methodologies. And you choose a methodology because it addresses your research questions. You choose a methodology because it's appropriate to address the phenomenon that is bothering you. You remember in our previous engagements, we talked about the research problem being the center of any research enterprise. So the research problem is the one that determines the choice of your methodology. And the methodologies that we have to choose from, let me just go quickly to this diagram, which I like very much. I will be moving between this diagram and the presentations. So as you can see from this diagram, if you start from your left, you will see that you have your paradigms, which are the philosophical assumptions, and then you've got your methodology. And we are saying that there are basic three methodologies that we use: quantitative, qualitative, and a mixed method research. And a mixed method research is deliberately put in the middle because it's actually in the middle of this methodology continuum. A methodology should be seen as a continuum rather than to be conceptualized as compartments. So you shouldn't compartmentalize yourself in quantitative, for example, or compartmentalize yourself in qualitative, for example. You should actually see methodology as a continuum, because qualitative researchers are also quantitative researchers. And indeed, if you look at quantitative researchers, they start with qualitative questions. For them to understand their questions, they start in a qualitative mode, and then they translate that qualitative mode into a quantitative mode. Therefore, methodology is a continuum rather than components or segments or compartments, as far as I can see. And the mixed method research fits into that continuum, and it is in the middle, trying to balance the philosophical assumptions of qualitative and quantitative. And then you go down and go down and go down. You can look at that diagram on your at your spare time and try to come to terms with it. And there's a reference there to an article that I wrote where that diagram appears, and you can actually engage with that diagram at your spare time. And I think you are aware by now that quantitative research methodology are basically mathematical models, theories, and hypotheses. And then the qualitative methodologies, you are aware that they are aimed at understanding human behavior in a deeper way than what quantitative researchers do. There are three basic methodologies that we use in research, and those are quali, quanti, and in the middle we've got mixed method research that we are talking about today. And we have agreed that mixed method research is becoming very popular. That's why all of you are attentively listening to this presentation, because you want to be part of the mixed method research movement, as it were. You want to be part of the third paradigm. So you realize that in research there are basically three paradigms. The first paradigm to manifest itself was the what we call the positivist paradigm, which is based on realism. Right? Can you see the diagram on the screen now? Okay. I'm sure some of you can see it. So the first paradigm that manifested itself in the scientific method was the positivist paradigm. And for a long time, people were positivists. And for a long time, the belief was that for you to be regarded as scientific, you had to be positivist. And then that paradigm was challenged by yet another paradigm, which was interpretivism. And interpretivism is the foundation of our qualitative research. And for a long time, there was animosity or a bit of antagonism or a conflict, as it were, between the qualitative people and the quantitative people. So they never saw eye to eye because the quantitative people thought that the qualitative people were not doing serious scientific research. So they looked down upon the qualitative people until the qualitative people came up with the concept of triangulation. The concept of triangulation, as we are aware, ladies and gentlemen, is the use of more than one method to understand a problem that you are investigating. For example, by one method, I mean you may use a questionnaire and interviews to carry out your research. By using a questionnaire and an interview, you are triangulating. You may use a questionnaire, interviews, and observation. You are still triangulating. Initially, the quantitative people you only used one method, which was questionnaire data collection. But as a result of the coming in of triangulation from the quantitative people also started using triangulation. So it was triangulation that actually made these two philosophical positions to see eye to eye, and the coming in of mixed method research. So I'll step down from this diagram. That's why this diagram is there, just to emphasize the development of the methodological waves in the scientific method. So I'll step down from it, but I'll still come back to this argument later on, just to emphasize how mixed method research came into being. For now, I'll go back to my argument of the popularity of mixed method research. You must remember, I am actually selling this methodology. I know most of you have already bought it. It's only that you still have to open the package and use it. But I'm still trying to sell this methodology to all researchers. We have agreed that this methodology addresses complex research problems. We've agreed that this methodology addresses multifaceted research problems. All problems actually are multifaceted. We decide as researchers to look at one angle, but you find that even if you are an economist, your problem has got economic dimensions, your problems has got social dimensions, your problem has got political dimensions. So if you try to address all these dimensions with using one methodology, you may not succeed. But if you are to use mixed method research, you'll be able to address all these dimensions. So therefore, if you are dealing with the problems of real life problems, which are actually multifaceted, real life problems, which are actually complex. So you need to move away from that mono methodology approach to mixed method approach, because our problems are complex. As complex as they are, therefore, they need a methodology that can address them comprehensively. So that's why we are saying mixed method research is important and is becoming popular. In other words, mixed method research is actually challenging the conventional ways of thinking about the research process. Our conventional ways of thinking about the research process are basically quantitative and qualitative. But mixed method research, this is why actually when you read mixed method research, you need to read the current books because the methodology is evolving. There are a lot of dimensions and a lot of developments that are coming in. And you are going to realize that as I go on with this presentation, that the language of mixed method research is transformed from the time when it started. So it is important to read. You can read the old texts, but also read the most recent ones. If you are a mixed method researcher, if you find that in your references you still use 2011, know that there's something wrong with your referencing. Actually, if you are a mixed method researcher, if you have challenges of accessing recent sources, at least if you use a source of 2015, I will actually forgive you. Anything older than 2015, in my view, will be using the old language, which we have moved away from. The language that I used, if you read my work of 2009, 2010, you find that I'm still using the old language. But if you read the work that I wrote, for example, this year and last year, I'm now using new language because I have actually come to understand that mixed method research has evolved and it is now adopting new terminology and moving away from the old terminology. We are still going to revisit this point as we go on. So the acceptance that bringing together both qualitative and quantitative research has got strength, has led to the popularity and the emergence of mixed method research. But mixed method research is not without its own criticisms. As we are aware, all methodologies have got shortcomings. And this is why I always emphasize to my students that at the end of your methodology chapter, you must evaluate your methodology. Tell us how you undertook your research journey, what problems you encountered. Because many people think that painting a rosy picture about research is the one that make you pass. Even if you had problems, you can still pass. What is important is you are saying, I am extending the frontiers of knowledge. Those who are going to come after me should be aware of the problems that I encountered and how I try to deal with them. You go out there, you find that there are challenges. And because of those challenges, you change your strategies. Those of you who are familiar with my presentations, you know that I cannot end my presentation without talking about Pamela. You know, Pamela is my daughter, who has also contributed to the growth of my approach in research. Talking of the research challenges, Pamela was in grade 12. Pamela being grade 12, she wanted to find out the attitude of South African motorists towards motor insurance. I think some of you are aware that, and maybe some of you are driving cars that are not insured because maybe there are reasons why you're not insuring your car. But Pamela, in her studies, she discovered that insuring your car is very important before you put it on the road. So she wanted to find out, therefore, about the attitude of motorists towards having insurance. So she had to decide on the site of her study. The question is, she was not going to stand on the highway and stop motorists and ask them about their views because they were not going to stop. So she had to find a place where she could actually administer a questionnaire or administer interviews to the motorists. For her at that time, the options were two. There might be many for you now, because you remember Pamela was in grade 12, and you guys are doing masters and PhD. So the options that were open to Pamela in grade 12 were to go to a filling station or to a gas station where people get their petrol before they can actually drive their cars. And the other way also, she thought, I think she likes food. She thought of these drive-ins. You remember that at KFC, McDonald's, you have got drive-ins. So she then decided she was going to use McDonald's drive-ins as a site to collect data. So she went to the manager and asked for permission to do the research at the premises of McDonald's. And luckily, the manager was very happy to see this young, energetic lady wanting to do research at his premises. And and to add the icing on the cake, she was also offered a meal at every time she was going to collect her data. And obviously, I think that was a very good incentive. I'm sure she was going to take almost the whole year having a meal every day. No, you know, I'm joking. So she started doing a research. I dropped at McDonald's and started doing a research. She approached the first respondent. And this respondent said, no, young lady, I'm very busy and I'm very hungry. I'll talk to you when I have collected my food. And Pamela was patient and waited for the respondent to collect the food. After collecting the food, the respondent said, no, I don't have time for that. I'm now going, I'm too busy. Came the second respondent, Pamela was not successful to get any response. Came the third respondent, no success. Up to 10. At point number 10, Pamela decided to phone me. And she was crying. And I thought something terrible had happened to her. So I said, but what's wrong, Pamela? I said, no, Daddy, these people are mean. They don't want to participate in my research. And I said, Pamela, welcome to the world of research. The world of research is very messy. The world of research is not smooth. The world of research is very challenging. So if you are going to be a researcher, you need to develop a thick skin. If you are going to be a successful researcher, you need to be flexible. If what you are trying to achieve is not working, try to use another strategy, because there will be challenges in the field. So that's what I'm trying to say here, is that there are challenges in the field. And when you write your research methodology chapter, when you evaluate your research journey, you need to tell us about those challenges. In qualitative research, they call that the audit trail. Audit trail to show what happened, what went wrong, how you corrected it, and what challenges you made, and how you dealt with them. And that is very important. So many researchers tend to even cook data in order to make their research look good. But that is not the essence of research. Research is supposed to be challenging, and it is incumbent upon all researchers to help future researchers to be able to deal with these challenges. So this is why I'm saying every research methodology has got its own shortcomings. There is no research methodology that is 100% perfect. All of them, even mixed method research that we are talking about now, has got its own problems. This is why we are talking about criticisms of it should be of not or of MMR. One, there is still no clarity on its definitions. For example, if you read today's literature, people are no longer using the term mixed method research. They are talking of mixed methods. And there was actually a very long article written by Mertens and company in 2016, trying to say which is the most appropriate term to describe this third methodological approach. So there's no clarity. Up to now, this is why we are still discussing it. And again, we are going to talk about it later, about the problems, about the clarity of the definition and its benefits. And another problem is the skills. It is very rare to find the qualities, or it is very rare to find the qualities of quantitative research and the qualitative research in one person. People are either quali or they are quanti. Very few people are mixed. I'm actually probably blessed because I'm actually mixed. In my approach, I started my life as a quantitative researcher, and for a long time, I was quanti until I was converted by one of my students to become a qualitative researcher. I'll tell you the story sometime if I get the opportunity before I end, how I could become converted. And as a result of that conversion, I became a balanced mixed method researcher. But you find that it's very rare. You find that even where you are sitting, you might find that you have a qualitative inclination or a quantitative inclination. So as a result, therefore, you find that you have a challenge to deal with the qualitative data if you are quanti. So it is that challenge that we find in our midst that makes the implementation or execution of mixed method research difficult. So there's a problem of skill, problem of definition. And also there's a problem of people who are still having that philosophical hangover. What do I mean by philosophical hangover? People who are still hanging on to the differences between positivism and interpretivism. They still think that they are incompatible. But the assumptions of positivism are different from the assumptions of interpretivism. So therefore, they're saying these are incompatible things. It's just like trying to mix oil and water. How do you mix the two? So they are still having this hangover. But some of us have moved on and we've realized that there is no reason to focus on our differences. There is more reason to focus on our commonalities, to say that we want to address the research problem and which methodology best addresses our problem. And in this case, the methodology that best addresses our problem is mixed method research. And then the other criticism is also that most mixed method research studies, they tend to have a quantitative bias. People have not moved from that quantitative mode. They are still having that quantitative bias. As a result, their studies are tainted by positivism. And lastly, of course, mixed method research is very expensive. You are going to realize as we look at the designs that it takes a relatively longer time than using one methodology. This is why I know that my colleagues have actually challenged me on this one. I've always said that people who are doing a master's should not bother themselves with mixed method research. Because your goal is to master methodology. You are not trying to experiment and trying to test and yeah, I mean, you're not trying to experiment with a lot of things. You're just trying to master the tools of the trade. So I always recommend that a master's student should actually use one methodology, either quanti or quali. And then if you want to do mixed method research, you can do it at PhD level. You have got all the time. Remember, at Unisa, a PhD takes between 3 to 6 years. So in those 3 to 6 years, you can be able to do your qualitative, quantitative, and a mix. You have got all the time. But at master's level, you don't have the time to mix and the luxury of a lot of time. You only have about 2 to 4 years, and you must be done. So if you are going to be mixing and mixing and mixing, the 4 years will actually go past before you finish mixing. So why waste your time on mixing when your goal is just to master, and then when you do your PhD, you can now start being very adventurous and being very adventurous, and then you can actually start mixing and experimenting with all these designs. Which is not to say you cannot use mixed method research at master's level. I'm only talking about the expense of time and also in terms of a skill. Remember, at master's level, you are still trying to master the ways of research. And then when you are still trying to master, and then you now try to fly before you even crawl, then you have a problem. So first of all, crawl, walk, and then at PhD level, you can start flying. Then you can start now doing mixed method research. But I'm not discouraging you from doing mixed method research. If you can fly in the Super League, no problem, you can fly. But be careful that one of your wings may drop. So this is why I'm recommending that you stick to one methodology when you're doing a master's, so that you don't take a lot of time and also you master the trade without any challenges. So let's go back now. I think I've solved my mixed method research, and I've shown you the problems that you may encounter doing mixed method research. And some of the problems are also outlined in the references that I gave you. Here, I'm just trying to give you a thread that will help you to understand mixed method research. So let me go back now to the origins of mixed method research. And then we'll now continue and continue. I'm sorry I cannot engage you with questions. I can see that I still have 1 hour to go. and I will try to use the next hour more productively, because the first hour was taken up with the challenges that we got from technology. So the use of mixed method research can be traced to the notion of multi-methods of Campbell and Fisk in 1959. But the person who further developed this concept was Jensing in 1970. And he brought about the concept of triangulation. You remember I did discuss the concept of triangulation. I said that initially, when the scientific method was evolving, it was based on quantitative foundations, and it used one method of data collection, and that method was basically experimentation and a questionnaire. They were both standardized, and that's why I'm saying one method. It was a standardized method, statistically based, whether it was experimentation, whether it was a questionnaire, but the essence was it was standardized, and it was uh, uh, focusing on boxing people. It was focusing on generalizing. It was focusing on painting people with one brush. It did not have a room for outliers. Everybody was either white or black. There was no one in between. That was positivism. So it was using one method. So to positivism, reality is one. Even if we look at the same object, 100 people look at the same object, they should actually see that object in the same way. And for a long time, people believed that reality was one. Until there were those people who started to question that reality is not one. I can give you an example, an extreme example of love. What is love? According to a positivist, you can't touch love. According to a positivist, you can't see love. According to a positivist, you can't smell love, and etc. and etc. So if you cannot observe empirically what love is, then love does not exist. Ha! So everybody is now wondering, what are we getting it? That's what positivism says. Because if you look at the concept of love, our concept of love varies from one individual to individual. Our experience of love varies from one individual to individual. To a positivist, that is not reality. Reality is one. So love, if it exists, is one. If love exists, we should actually experience love in the same way. That's what positivism says. So for a long time, people believed that reality was one and was external to the knower. The knower, that is yourself, the researcher, that is the knower. You don't have any influence over reality. So it was not until the coming in of the qualitative researchers that concept was challenged. Qualitative researchers believe that there are many realities. There are multiple realities. As I have illustrated, we feel love differently. That does not mean that love does not exist. It exists because we are different. We interpret and construct reality differently. So the coming in of qualitative research, therefore, kind of brought in a kind of crisis in the scientific method. Because the scientific method has been based or built upon the foundation of one reality, the foundation of objectivism. And now qualitative research is coming and saying, no, there are a lot of realities. So there was, as I said in the beginning, a problem between these approaches to research. I didn't want to use the word epistemology because I took almost 20 years to understand the word epistemology. So what I'm actually discussing here are the epistemologies of knowledge, the science of what counts as knowledge. So I don't want to use the word epistemology. If you find it in my writings, please, you can use your dictionary, but now I'm not going to use it now. I'm just going to say there are, to the positivist, there's one reality. To the qualitative researcher, realities are multiple. And then came to be what they call post-positivism. Positivists also realized that they were actually not very accurate in believing that there was one reality. Then they brought about the whole concept of post-positivism. But my brief here is not to discuss the philosophical foundations and paradigms that influence research. I'm just trying to show you how mixed method research came about in this uh, what I would call philosophical war, in these wars of science. That is, the science being one science being qualitative, the other science being quantity. So the wars of science were based on this uh, uh, difference, to say that reality is one and the other science is saying there are many realities. So for a long time, because positivism, as you remember, was the pioneer of the scientific method, and therefore positivists tended to dominate. And as a result, when qualitative research came into being, they looked down upon qualitative research. They said, okay, you guys, you qualitative people, you tell stories. All right. How can stories be science? All right. We can accept that stories can be science. But tell us, how do you establish validity? Then now the qualitative people found themselves in a kind of a fix. They had to find out how then do we establish validity for us to be accepted by the quantitative people. And this Gensing we're talking about in 1970 came up with a clever idea called triangulation. He said, with us qualitative researchers, we look at a phenomenon from many angles in order to establish the essence of the phenomenon. You remember when we were in grade one, those of you who went to grade one, I know some of you started at PhD, but I started at grade one. At grade one, when we are asked to draw a human being, you will have a small circle and two sticks that represents the hands, and one block of stick that represents the chest and the stomach, and two sticks that represent the 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 legs. And that was a human being. Or that was the for me, I would say that was the image of my father. Because first of all, you draw your mother or your father, whatever the case may be. And that actually is a very clear depiction of positivism. Positivism tends to be very elementary, and it tries to simplify reality. That's where the problem is. Whereas now, when you look at qualitative research, you're saying this is a complex issue. For me to look at a human being and just look at the front and say that's what represents a human being is not accurate. I must look at the back, I must look at the sides, I must look at all the angles of a human being for me to say this is a human being. So the approach of the qualitative researcher, because he's looking at all angles, is a relatively holistic approach. So when the qualitative people came up with the concept of triangulation, of using more than one method, of using more than one angle to look or to investigate a phenomenon, quantitative people were convinced that qualitative research was science. This is why you guys today, you can comfortably be qualitative without anyone looking down upon you. So triangulation, therefore, was the forerunner of mixed method research. Because triangulation was actually saying, let's actually use multi-methods. So in the 1980s, mixed method research came into being. And the people who have popularized mixed method research is Green and their co-authors and Creswell. So in the social sciences, when we talk of mixed method research, these are the major scholars. There are other scholars, of course, that have come up before, but these were the major scholars that came up with the idea of mixed method research. So the formative years from 1950 to 1980 were the years where we're moving away from one methodology to using more than two methodologies. And by now, in most disciplines, mixed method research has become popular. Let's move on to the terminology of mixed method research. I told you that there is a problem with the terminology of mixed method research. And as I said in my presentation, you need actually to read the most recent works in order to understand uh, uh, the changes in the terminology of mixed method research. But the major change that I want to highlight in this presentation is the concept of triangulation. Triangulation was one of the mixed method research designs until 2011. From the time when mixed method research came into being, triangulation was one of the mixed method research designs. We are going to talk about designs later, but that design is no longer uh, used. It has been discarded with the development of mixed method research. So this is one example of terminology that has changed. And it is one of the major examples. So when you write, please help us. Don't refer to triangulation as a mixed method research design. If you have already done so, please go back and revise your work and make sure that you use the current terminology. I'm going to come back to this point again when I present the mixed method research designs. I remember I had actually a problem with one of my students who was quoting very extensively from literature, trying to show that triangulation is a mixed method research design. But little did he understand that it was a design until 2011, 2012. There are, of course, some authors who still use it as a mixed method research design. It shows that those authors are not up to date with the terminology that we are using in mixed method research. So I'm not going to go deeper into the methodology or into the terminology because you already have the notes and you already have the text that I recommended that can help you to deal with the question of terminology. So I like templates. You remember I told you that my other life was in quantitative. Quantitative people like templates because they are not creative. If you say write a report to a quantitative person, he will say or she will say, where is the template? They want to plug in things. They don't want to think outside the box. This is why a questionnaire forces you to answer questions in a certain way because they want to box you. So templates are there to box you. You are not supposed to be different. You are supposed to be the same. We are very lazy. We want to paint with one brush. We don't want to take a brush for the yellow paint, a brush for the black paint, a brush for the pink paint. So we just want to mix and have one color, a general color, and then just use one paint. And we paint everything with one brush. So that's where the origin of templates can be traced to positivism. So you must forgive me because the positivist ghost is always haunting me because I started research in the positivist mode. So I am providing you with a template here of how to deal with mixed method research designs. So most of my talk will be based on this template. But before I come back to this template, I want us to first of all look at the major features of mixed method research. So as you are aware, just skip and go on to the slide after that diagram. There is a slide that shows the 5 major features of mixed method research practice. Just go a slide further than the diagram. Underneath that diagram, there is that slide. So as you are aware, I'm sure we are all together. I said you skip the first diagram, you go to the next diagram with the one that shows the major features of mixed method research design. So the major features of mixed method research design are obviously, as we all agree, the foundation is to formulate a research question. The research question must have a qualitative and a quantitative component for it to be a mixed method research design. You may have the main question, and then you may have sub questions that require either qualitative or quantitative data. Then from there, you must frame your research within the mixed method research philosophy. And remember, mixed method research cannot be positivist. Mixed method research cannot be interpretivist. But mixed method research is based on pragmatism. So your philosophy there, therefore, should be pragmatism. The question of theory is a contentious one, but Creswell claims that you must also have a theory for you to say you are using a mixed method research design. After that, you must specify the design or approach that you are using. To say that I am using mixed method research is not enough. You must specify. This is where the concept of triangulation I was discussing comes in. When you are specifying the design, this is where you are going to deal with the mixed method research designs, of which I said triangulation is no longer one of them. We are going to deal with the mixed method research designs shortly, but triangulation is no longer one of them. Then after that, after specifying the mixed method research design that you are using, you must collect and analyze both qualitative and quantitative data. I'm going to come to this point again of collecting qualitative and quantitative data later on. And after collecting this data, you must integrate the two types of data and their results. There shouldn't be any one dominant data set. They should be balanced for it to be called a mixed method research design. So the quality of a mixed method research design, therefore, is actually judged using this criteria. There must be a specified research design that you cannot get away with. You must specify what is your research design. I have heard a lot of people saying, I'm using mixed method research, I'm using mixed method research. Then I say, what is your design? Then you stop them. They start thinking, no, but I'm using qualitative and quantitative. Yes, you are using qualitative and quantitative, but what is your design? Using qualitative and quantitative does not necessarily mean that you are using mixed method research. We may be actually be using multi-methods, which is different from mixed method research. So if you are using mixed method research, you need to have a specific design. And there are generally basic designs and complex designs in mixed method research. I am going to deal with the basic designs shortly, and then I'm just going to allude to complex designs. Well, at this stage, we are still trying to understand what mixed method research is all about, and therefore we cannot go to the complex mode at this level. We are going to go at the basic mode. After the basic mode, then we go to the complex mode. And then the major characteristic of mixed method research designs or mixed method research is integration. Integration is the key to mixed method research designs. Therefore, it is the extent to which you integrate your data that determines whether or not your study is a mixed method research study. So integration is the key. I'm going to probably come back to it as we go on. I have discussed briefly the first part, which is the foundational assumptions. The foundational assumptions are nothing other than the philosophical foundations of research. And we've agreed on the philosophical foundations. They are philosophical because here we are dealing with issues of epistemology, we are dealing with issues of methodology, we are dealing with issues of ontology, we are dealing with issues of axiology. So those are philosophies of knowledge. Epistemology, what counts as knowledge. So we are going to be dealing with these foundations, especially those of you who are at PhD level. There's no way, I know in the natural sciences, you are the ones actually who killed the whole idea of philosophical assumptions because you want shortcuts. Most natural scientists, they start with methodology. They assume that research is tainted by philosophical assumptions. They pretend that research is neutral. But research is not neutral. Research is based on some philosophical assumptions. All researchers have got assumptions about reality. And it is that assumption about reality that influences the methodology. You remember some of you who grew up during my time, and I know that very few have because we are all young, but I'm sure you have heard the concept of Cold War, whereby the Soviet Union, which is now Russia, and the United States of America were having an ideological war, communism versus capitalism. Some of you, I think you have been still reading about it, and some of you, of course, you belong to the Communist Party. You'll understand what the Communist Party stands for. So, the situation I'm talking about of a Cold War, it was the differences between the Soviet Union and the United States of America. And during that time, there were scientists, and the scientists in the communist bloc were peddling or were projecting a communist view of science. And the scientists in the capitalist world, that is in the United States of America, UK, and etc., they were projecting a capitalist view of science. So what I'm trying to say here is science is not neutral. Science is based on philosophical foundations. Science is based on philosophical assumptions. So we need actually to get away from the belief that science is objective. Science can never be objective because it's based on one's assumptions about reality. Your assumptions about reality actually defines how you research and what you research on and what you focus on in your research. It actually is determined by your philosophical assumptions. That's why we have had in the recent past, there's been news of researchers, for example, from the University of Stellenbosch, from the University of Cape Town, who have been accused of racism, stereotyping, and all that. I'm not surprised where I'm sitting because these people are still influenced by their philosophical assumptions. Their assumptions about reality. And then that is why it is very important to declare your baggage so that we judge you according to your baggage. If your philosophical assumptions are different to ours, you must state them in the forefront, up front, and say, these are my philosophical assumptions. So whatever conclusions I come up with, they are based on these philosophical assumptions. I'm not trying to be politically correct or to be politically incorrect, but my understanding of research is based on these assumptions. Whether that is acceptable or not to your supervisor or to your listeners is another thing. But for me, you should be judged according to your philosophical assumptions. So therefore, when you look at mixed method research designs, your philosophical assumption is pluralism and pragmatism. So you cannot say that I am using mixed method research design, but I'm a positivist. You can't be a positivist or interpretivist if you are using mixed method research design. So you are in the middle there where there's a red arrow going down. So you are a pragmatist. You are borrowing from positivism and interpretivism. You are not biased towards any of the philosophical assumptions. So that is the first fundamental point about your philosophical stance. It must be pragmatist, and therefore you become a mixed method research investigator. So after having made that deliberate philosophical choice, you need now to say, what is the purpose of mixing? You remember in my introduction, I said you need to use mixed method research because it is appropriate, not because it is fashionable. So now you need to tell us, why are you using mixed method research? What added value do you get from mixed method research? To say that I'm using mixed method research in order to get a comprehensive picture is not enough. It's actually meaningless. What is a comprehensive picture? Comprehensive in what sense? So it is important from the beginning to say, I am using this method of research because it is appropriate and I am going to get a benefit from using this methodology, and the benefit will be ABC. One of the benefits, for example, as you are going to see as we go on, is you can use mixed method in order to explain your results. You can use mixed method research designs in order to explain your results. Obviously, if you want to explain your results, it means that your approach is basically quantitative. Quantitative. So when you want to explain your results, you start with a quantitative component of your study. And then you go to a qualitative component in order to explain the results. When you do your quantitative study, you may discover some significant results. And you may not be able to explain them. So why are these results so significant? And then you carry out a qualitative study in order to explain those significant results. So I will jump from appropriateness to choosing a specific mixed method approach or design. Why? Because I'm trying to explain the appropriateness. Appropriateness, yes, it is very appropriate because I want to explain my results. So, and as I said, for you to explain your results, you start with your quantitative methodology or quantitative approach. So in this case, if you look at the block below choosing a specific mixed method approach, there are 3 blocks there. Block 1 is sequential exploratory. Block 2 in the middle is sequential exploratory. Block 3 is concurrent or parallel convergent. Right? So I'm trying to discuss the appropriateness, but I want to use an example from the 3 blocks. So the block I am going to use is sequential explanatory. In other words, when you are using this specific design, you do or you conduct your research in sequence. You conduct your research one component after the other. In other words, in this design, which is in the middle, which is sequential explanatory, you will be quantitative in approach. So your first approach is quantitative. You do the quantitative or you conduct the quantitative study and get the results. After getting the results, you now want to explain the results. In trying to explain the results, you now carry out a qualitative component of your study. So it's sequential. You start with the quanti, then the next component is quali. Quanti, you get your results, then you can't explain your results. Then you go to quali in order to explain your results. I know some of you are getting confused. Let me give you an example. I am Patrick. I write a lot of articles. And I write with different authors. As a quantitative researcher, I can find out the frequency of Patrick's publication patterns. As a quantitative researcher, I can find out who Patrick publishes with. As a quantitative researcher, I can find out when Patrick publishes their work. But after doing that, I cannot tell why he's publishing, for example, with Professor Mbata. I cannot tell why he's publishing with Tony. Because the documents before me can only tell me about the frequency, where he publishes, and that's it. But I cannot explain why he publishes with Professor Mbata or Tony. And where can I get that information? I can only get that information from Patrick himself or from Professor Mbata. So for me to get that information, to explain the patterns that I see in Patrick's publication record, I need to go to Professor Mbata or to go to Patrick himself to say, why did you publish with Professor Mbata here? And why did you publish with Uton here? What were the reasons? And it is me who can only give you the reasons and not the documents that are before you and not the quantitative data that is before you. So for you to explain the quantitative results, you need now to do a qualitative study. You need now to carry out in-depth interviews with Patrick, Professor Mbata, and Tony. And Tony will tell that, oh no, Professor Ngulube was my mentor, and he was actually publishing with me as part of the mentorship program. Professor Mbata said, no, Patrick certainly is interested into environmental agriculture, and he's looking at the social aspects of the environmental aspect of agriculture. And I'm looking at the natural and I'm trying to use a rudimental example here, because Professor Mbata will be more in the natural sciences than into the social sciences. So Patrick is coming in with his expertise to address the complex aspects of the social aspects of agriculture. So I'm bringing him in, and therefore this is why we co-published. So this is what I mean by saying you can have a quantitative study, and the quantitative study may not completely address your question. You may not answer all the questions. So where one methodology cannot completely answer your questions, you need to look for another methodology if you want to completely answer your questions. But at the master's level, I could say I recommend that future studies carry out a mixed method research study in order to uncover or in order to explain the results that are presented by this study of mine. So you have covered yourself. You have shown that you are aware that the story you are giving is incomplete. And there is a way of completing the story. And the way of completing the story is to carry out a qualitative component in order to address the unanswered questions. So that is a typically sequential explanatory mixed method research study. I can give you another example. I know most of you understand the whole concept of money and motivation. I know I tend to be very controversial at times when I talk to my colleagues, that every time when you go to the negotiating table, we are talking of percentages. We want a double-digit percentage when we negotiate for our salaries. Is motivation to work based on salaries only? I always ask my colleagues. We are very controversial. Why do I look at motivation in a bigger picture? I look at motivation the way I look at it because I think that salary is one of the motivators, but there are a lot of other hygiene factors that you need to take into consideration when you are working. But in my example, I'm going to look at the salary. For me to be scientific, let me give you an example that actually brings in a lot of methodological spin-offs. I am interested in finding out the extent to which money motivates chief executive officers of companies. This is what I'm trying to find out. To say that the more money you give to your chief executive officer, the more motivated your chief executive officer is. So this is a quantitative study. So obviously, my question is, where will I get chief executive officers? So for me, my sample frame would be the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. I will go to the Johannesburg Stock Exchange and look at those companies that are listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, and they become my sample frame. In other words, they are the population of my study. So in those companies listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, I am going to send a questionnaire to all the CEOs, and I'm expecting a response. After getting my response, I will analyze my data statistically. I am aware that Tony is arranging a workshop on data analysis using SPSS. So I'll use SPSS to analyze my data. And then after analyzing my data, I'll present my results. As I present my results, I discover some interesting things. I discover that Patrick is working for this company and he is highly paid, but his motivation is close to zero. And one of my other discoveries is that Tony works for this company. And Tony is not paid very handsomely. Tony, comparing with other chief executive officers, he earns very a very low salary. But Tony is highly motivated. So I cannot explain this. When I started off, you know that when you start off in quantitative research, you start off with tentative assumptions, tentative conclusions. My gut feeling when I started this research was that money motivates chief executive officers. But Tony shows me that money is not motivating him. And Patrick shows me that even if he's getting money also, I mean, Tony is showing me that he's getting very little, but he's highly motivated. And Patrick is getting a lot of money, but is least motivated. This is surprising. It's abnormal. That's what positivists would say. Because in qualitative research, there is no abnormal person. In qualitative research, there is no mad person. Because we don't classify, we don't categorize people. Quantitative people are the ones that categorize people. So to quantitative people, Tony and Patrick are abnormal. And normally the language that they use the language of outliers. And they say, oh, these outliers are bringing some noise into my data. So I'm going to ignore them. And then I'll report the rest of my results. Because I am reporting on the majority. You know, the whole idea of majoritarianism, or the majority approach to life, comes from qualitative people. Quantitative people, sorry. These are the people who believe in voting. That the majority is always right. I won't be political here because I want to just remain a researcher, but I think you can read between the lines. So the quantitative person will say, I will ignore these outliers. They are actually a noise in my data. But as a mixed method researcher, you are saying, now I've got these results which I cannot explain. I cannot explain why Patrick with such a high salary and is not motivated, and why Tony with such a very low salary is highly motivated. So the question therefore is, as a mixed method researcher, you must now go to Tony, you must now go to Patrick and find out the reasons why they are behaving differently. So as you remember in my introduction, I said mixed method research accommodates diversity. Mixed method research accommodates the voiceless. The traditional research methodologies tend to sideline the minority. They tend to sideline the voiceless. But in mixed method research, all voices have a home. Now, as a mixed method researcher, you have to go to Patrick and Tony and say, why are you different? Give us reasons. Then the mixed method research is appropriate in this instance because it is helping you to explain your quantitative results. Going forward, I can still go on now to explain sequential exploratory because I have already moved so that I can move between showing appropriateness and the characteristics of the design. All this is outlined, especially if you read, I posted a handbook of connecting research method to information science. The term information science there can be misleading. But the chapter I wrote there on mixed method research actually applies to almost all the social sciences, all the social and management sciences. So if you can read that chapter, you'll get an explanation of these things in detail. And you also get this diagram in that chapter in detail. But let me go on. Sequential exploratory. You remember explanatory. We said you are quantity. You are a quantitative researcher who is encountered with results that you cannot explain. Then you do a second component of your study, which is qualitative, to explain your quantitative results. So your specific mixed method research design is sequential explanatory. And we agreed it is sequential because you start off with the quantity, and after finishing quantity, you go on to quali to explain your quantitative results. And then now let's turn over to the sequential exploratory. In exploratory, you know, people who explore who are imaginative and innovative are qualitative people. They don't have preconceived ideas. They explore, they have an open mind. So if you're exploring, this is why at times I tend to quarrel with my quantitative colleagues. I remember I also use those terms in my other life to say I'm exploring. If you are quanti, you cannot explore. Because quantitative people confirm, they test. What you are testing, you are confirming. You are trying to say, does it exist or not? So you are not, you are already in a boxing mood. You're already in a categorizing mood. So you're confirming, you're not exploring. You're putting everything in one basket, in one box. So therefore, when you're saying exploratory, once you use the word exploratory, I expect you to be quali. I expect your approach to be quali. So when you're saying I am using a sequential exploratory mixed method approach, it means that your sequence is going to start with the quali going to quanti. You remember that in qualitative research, we don't generalize. You study a context and you describe that context. You cannot generalize Patrick's behavior to all the professors at Unisa if you are a qualitative researcher. But if you are a quantitative researcher, you are going to study a few professors at Unisa, and then you say all professors at Unisa are like this. But if you are quali, you say, I am only studying one professor here, and the professor I'm studying here is Patrick. And my results are about Patrick. And what Patrick does as a professor at Unisa cannot be generalized to other professors. Because qualitative research is context specific. It's done or conducted in its natural setting. So therefore, what I'm trying to emphasize here is, if you are going to be quali, you are going to study a few individuals. But because of the quantitative ghost that is always haunting all of us, we want to generalize the results to a bigger population. So how do you do that if you are doing sequential exploratory? You remember, I'm sure you've already done introduction to qualitative research. Normally, qualitative research is used when little is known about a phenomenon. You want to explore because little is known. Inadequate information is available on that phenomenon. You don't do qualitative research because you are afraid of statistics. You do qualitative research because little is known about your phenomenon that you are interested in. Little is known about what is bothering you. Little is known about your research question. Therefore, that's why you are qualitative, not because you are afraid of statistics. Because if you do qualitative because you are afraid of statistics, then you are not yet initiated into the research environment. Going back, therefore, little is known about this subject. I'll give you an example of something that is little is known. I know some of you know very little about indigenous knowledge systems. You have heard about them, and some of you pretend that you know a lot about them, but you have never immersed yourself in indigenous knowledge systems. And very little is known about indigenous knowledge systems. This is why many people look down upon indigenous knowledge practices, because they think they are primitive. They think that indigenous knowledge is not as superior as scientific knowledge, but indigenous knowledge is also scientific. So for me, you may argue with me, but I think in my research and writings, I've realized that even in the curriculum, some of you maybe are even hearing the word indigenous knowledge systems for the first time today in this presentation, and you're wondering what it is. Even in the curriculum, in our curriculum, we talk of decoloniality, we talk of decolonizing the curriculum, we talk of transforming the curriculum, but we don't have indigenous practices in our curriculum. We don't have indigenous knowledge in our curriculum. So this is why I think little is known about indigenous practices. So the example I'm going to give is based on indigenous knowledge systems. Oh, time is running out, but let me try and fast forward. Because I think the crux of the argument is about the design. Then the rest, I'll just give 5 minutes, and then I'll wind off. Indigenous knowledge systems. Indigenous people, for example, they treat their animals using indigenous medicine. I'll give you an example of what a disease called black water. This disease actually affects the front leg of a cow or a beast or a bull or a calf, but I'll call it a cow for ease of reference. It affects the front leg. At the times it can be fatal. The front leg, I mean the forequarter, the forequarter. So it is as people use a certain log that they put at the entrance of the cattle run. At the entrance, you just put that log. As cattle jump over that log, they are assured not to be attacked by this disease I'm talking about. So, as a mixed method researcher, I'll go and interview maybe Patrick, who has got this knowledge. And Patrick explains to me that if my cattle continuously go over or cross this log, they are never affected by this disease. And then I'll write my qualitative results. But then there are two things I can do with the data I get from Patrick, from the interview I have with Patrick. I can actually design an instrument which I can actually use on a larger population in order for me to generalize the results that I get from Patrick. So you see my point? I've explored what Patrick does in order to treat this disease. And these results are specific to Patrick. And now I want to generalize them to a larger population. So in order for me to generalize them to a larger population, I now design a questionnaire based on the knowledge of Patrick, of what Patrick gave me. In other words, the knowledge that Patrick gives me allows me to extract the variables I can measure from a larger population. So you'll discover that in the literature, you will read that the exploratory mixed method research design is actually designed for instrument development. It's actually designed to come up with a questionnaire to test the variables in order to generalize them to a larger population. So that's one of the ways that you can use. Start off with it can be focus group interviews if it is a number of people, say 6 to 12, and then from those focus group interviews, you identify the variables that you are going to measure on a larger population, and that is mixed method research. So the qualitative aspect of your research helps you to design an instrument to administer on a larger population for you to be able to generalize the results to a larger population. Another thing also here you can also do is an experiment. The one way is to develop a questionnaire, as I said. The other way would be an experiment. I know some of you don't believe that the cattle can be treated by just jumping over a log. So therefore you say, no, I can't believe that. This is superstition. It's not scientific. I want to carry out an experiment and prove that if cattle jump over this log, and indeed they will be cured, or indeed they won't be affected by this disease. So therefore, you carry out an experiment. You have got your treatment group and your control group. Your treatment group is the people that you give the log. So all their cattle, they cross over that log over a period of time, especially during the rain season. And you realize that the cattle in the treatment group, they don't get affected. And the control group are those farmers who don't use the log on their cattle. And then you discover that all those farmers that don't use the log, their cattle are affected by the disease. So you can conclude, therefore, that Patrick's remedy of using this log from this tree, which will remain nameless, is effective. So that is a typically mixed method research design. I started off with a qualitative design, looked for information about treating animal diseases using indigenous knowledge systems. And after that, I carried out a laboratory experiment to find out whether or not the treatment is effective. And that is mixed method research. And therefore, I am using mixed method research design in order to generalize my qualitative findings to a larger population. Two, I am using mixed method research design in order to test whether the treatment is effective. So those are two examples there that I'm giving using a sequential exploratory mixed method research. And finally, there is the last design, which is concurrent or convergent. Convergent is from triangulation. So in other words, you are carrying out qualitative and quantitative research concurrently. That is parallel. You do quali at the same time with quanti. You are administering a questionnaire and also interviewing your population. For me, this is the easiest mixed method research design. Which is not to say you cannot use the other three designs, but this one is easy because even the integration is easy. You can integrate at the data analysis level. You collect both qualitative and quantitative data. You can look at, for example, you are looking at the effect of waterborne disease like bilharzia on a population. You administer a questionnaire on part of the population about bilharzia, and you interview the other part of the population about bilharzia, while is collecting data from the other population using a questionnaire. And those data collection methods are done almost at the same time. That is concurrently. They are not done sequential. You are trying to avoid bias. And also is economic because you are able to go to a data collection site at one go. You collect both qualitative and quantitative data at the same time. You save time and money. So for me, that is the most attractive mixed method research design. But again, your choice of your mixed method research design is going to be determined by your research question. So therefore, we have agreed that we have to show appropriateness. We have agreed that we have to choose a specific mixed method research design. It is not enough to say I'm using mixed method research because I'm collecting qualitative and quantitative data. You must tell us the reason why I'm collecting these sets of data. You must tell us the reason how I'm going to collect the qualitative data, the timing. Is it going to be sequential? Is it going to be concurrent? So these three designs are the basic mixed method research designs. The complex or the advanced mixed method research designs start from these. You cannot go to advanced without starting from either sequential, exploratory, or sequential, explanatory, or concurrent convergent design. You cannot. So therefore, this is the foundation of your advanced mixed method research design. And normally, the advanced methods are normally used in intervention studies, very large scale intervention studies, normally in health and other intervention studies. Like, for example, if you look at COVID-19, COVID-19 has got a lot of interventions that need a lot of concerted effort in order to deal with the pandemic. So this is where you need a multi-stage mixed method research design. But I'm not going to discuss the multi-stage and other complex designs because I've given you the basics and you can work with the basics to go to the advanced. And the other question I have not addressed here is the question of sampling. If you are using sequential exploratory, obviously you are going to use the sampling techniques that you use in qualitative research. Then after using the qualitative research techniques, you use the quantitative sampling techniques in the second leg. So you cannot use a purposive sampling technique when you are doing your quantitative component. You should use the assumptions of sampling that are used in quantitative research. The same applies to sequential explanatory. You remember my example? I had a sampling frame, and I said I was going to use the whole population. Fortunately, I didn't. I could actually sample and use a percentage of the population using the sampling theory. Again, if it is quantitative, it must be based on the sampling theory. Then when I go to my qualitative, I can go now for convenience sampling or judgmental sampling. There's nothing problematic about it. With concurrent, it means that we are using both probability and non-probability sampling. It means that you are using a probability sample for your quantitative component and a non-probability sample for your qualitative component. And we have realized that with the research methods, that is data collection methods, we can use interviews, questionnaires, observation, artifact analysis, document analysis. You can analyze your ports, your statues, your buildings, your chairs, your whatever. All that is done in mixed method research. And then after that, you need actually to integrate your data. Integration can happen at many levels. By deliberately saying you are using a specific mixed method research approach, you are actually showing the reader that you are deliberately going to use a mixed method research design. So you're already mixing at that level. By being specific about your design, you are actually showing that your mixing starts from the time when you are planning your study. And then, of course, the data collection, the actual physical data collection may not be mixed. But after collecting the data, you now integrate all that data. And then you tell us how the integration of the data gave you superior results than what you'd get if you had used a single method. And then your research methodology study would be complete. And then I will be very happy to welcome you to the mixed method research family. And then I will end there. And I always want to end with my signature package. A bird does not sing because it has an answer. It sings because it has a song. You are joining this mixed method research journey, not because you have an answer, but we've got a song. Your song is your research question that needs to be addressed using mixed method research design. So it is up to you to decide on the appropriateness of using mixed method research design. It is up to you to choose a specific mixed method research design to justify your use of mixed method research design. It is up to you to understand that mixed method research is based on the philosophical assumption of pragmatism and not positivism or not interpretivism. It is in the middle. It is up to you, and that is your song, to sample appropriately according to either the quantitative or the qualitative tradition. I do discuss the whole sampling, the crossover, and all those things in the chapter that I referred to. And you can use that as a basis, because it's quite simplified, as a basis of your understanding of sampling in the mixed method research design. Then you can now go to some of the authorities I use in coming up with that chapter. So this is my song, and I'm singing it not because I have a total answer to mixed method research design. Because as I said, mixed method research is evolving. As you research, you may come up with a new and interesting dimension to mixed method research design. And they will actually take upon the challenge if you actually challenge us with a new approach. So we are waiting to hear your songs in your multitudes as you write your PhD projects. And I wish to thank you for your attending, your attention, and I will attend to your questions. And if you have got any points of clarification on my presentation, you can post your questions on our M&D research forum, and I will attend to them as time goes on. And I'm passionate about this. And the answer is to read. You cannot get all the answers from me. I didn't get the answers from just reading one source. You can realize even from my writing that I read quite a number of sources. That's the only way you can understand mixed method research design. You cannot just read Creswell and then say, I will understand mixed method research design. Even Creswell himself, if you read the latest version, he actually admits that he has moved and developed and grown in his mixed method research journey. And it has actually influenced even his change of methodology. Not change of methodology. His change of terminology and approach to mixed method research design. He's also being educated by other mixed method research designers, other mixed methodologists. I am also being informed by other mixed method methodologists. And so as upcoming a mixed method research methodologist, you need to learn from other methodologists. And you need to develop, and then they need to be open to change and be flexible, like Creswell, our pioneer in mixed method research design. With those words, ladies and gentlemen, you enjoy the rest of your workshop, and I wish to thank you sincerely. Goodbye.